Hey, vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and woke up this morning to some sad news. Well, another one of our great musical icons has passed on. One that I was especially fond of, loved his music and everything he stood for, and that was Mr. Jerry Jeff Walker. Actually, Ronald Crosby, Ronald Clyde Crosby. But he reinvented himself in his early 20s and dubbed himself Jerry Jeff Walker, and he was that uh, from that point on. Born in upstate New York, he was part of a musical family, and he was kind of a troubadour. Got out of high school, joined National Guard, and then kind of went AWOL from that. Was traveling the country with his guitar, playing music. Ended up in Greenwich Village in the early 60s and became a part of that scene. Joined a band called Circus Maximus, which is kind of psychedelic folk. That it didn't last too long. That wasn't the direction he wanted to head in. He palled around with people like David Bromberg. They wrote songs, played music, and traveled the country. In 1968, I guess it was, he got locked up in the drunk tank in New Orleans and met a guy there that was an alcoholic that danced for drinks. Used to play in minstrel shows and county fairs. And from that experience, which you would have thought would have been like one of your low points in your life, being, thrown in the drunk tank, he wrote the song "Mr. Bojangles." A lot of people mistakenly think that song is about the tap dancer, the black tap dancer, Bojangles Robinson, but it's not. Uh, in the time Jerry Jeff may have been about 65 when he was in the drunk tank. During that time in the South in your cities and everything, you would have separate cells. Even the jail cells were segregated. So this wasn't an African American gentleman he met. This was a Caucasian gentleman. But that song kind of provided for him the royalties that would enable him to follow his own muse. And he did several albums in the late 60s, solo albums, and eventually he ended up in Austin, Texas, and became a mainstay and one of the early proponents of the Austin music scene, along with Willie Nelson and others. Jerry Jeff, just a wonderful, happy-go-lucky fella. I was fortunate enough to see him a couple of times in concert, in clubs in the late, early, probably 80, 81, something like that. But I'd been a fan since high school in the mid 70s. I'll show you a few of his albums here. This is he actually had about 4 albums before he ended up in Texas, and that's one of them. I think this is about his 3rd album. Being Free, it's called. I love this picture on the back. Check that out. And 72, I've got these records I'm going to show you pretty much in chronological order, but not perfectly. David Bromberg's on this one, by the way. Just the self-titled Jerry Jeff Walker. And it's a really, really good album here. That kind of started the Texas thing, and that's when I picked up, because I was in 74, 75, I was 15, 16 years old, and a new TV show came on public television called Austin City Limits. And I don't specifically remember seeing Jerry Jeff on Austin City Limits. I feel sure he played it in those early years, but I don't specifically remember seeing that particular show. But that kind of, whet my appetite and a lot of my friends' appetites for that Texas singer-songwriter, outlaw country, not not your parents' and grandparents' country music type thing, I guess you'd say. Showed this yesterday, the video. This is Walker's Collectibles. It was on MCA and then Elektra Records. Here's a really good one. This is what's played in the background right now. And now my Spanish is not good. Viva Tolinga. And this live album is just wonderful. It's got about half the songs are his own compositions. That was his original call to fame, of course, with the song Mr. Bojangles. That's what probably everybody that's not that versed in his music will remember him for. But there are actually some other songs that he didn't even actually write that, to me, are the standards of the Jerry Jeff catalog. He does songs he wrote on here: Getting By, Sangria Wine, Little Bird, Get It Out. But he also does songs playing right now in the background. Guy Clark's Desperados Waiting for a Train. This was before he was playing Guy Clark's songs before they were picked up by a lot of other artists. London Homesick Blues. Gary P. Nunn was a piano player in his Lost Gonzo band when he got to Texas and formed. And you'll know London Homesick Blues from the Austin City Limits theme song for many, many years. And I want to go home to the Armadillo. Country music in Amarillo and Abilene. And he does Martin Murphy's Backsliders Wine. But here's the one that was the standard. This is the one that every bar band played in the 70s and 80s. The one that got everybody up and partying. And that's Up Against the Wall, Redneck Mother. And that's a Ray Wiley Hubbard song. Ray Wiley's still out there performing, by the way. He was in the Lost Gonzo band as well. And Up Against the Wall, Redneck Mother is just... I was in a record shop in Fayetteville, and I realized the really nice guy that ran the Sean, I believe, that runs the record shop in Fayetteville. But his background's in heavy metal and things like that, and he's a lot younger than me as well, maybe in his 30s. And I saw one of this first Jerry Jeff Walker, this early Jerry Jeff Walker album in here, and I got it from him. I said, wow, I'm so pleased to find this Jerry Jeff Walker. And he was totally, just like me if he had named some heavy metal group or something. And it's like, just had no idea. I said, Jerry Jeff? No, not a clue. Up Against the Wall, Redneck Mothers? Blank face, nothing. But if you're a certain age, you know that song. That is the party anthem. Kind of like You Never Even Call Me by My Name would be a similar one. Okay. Like I said, I've got these records in kind of chronological order. That's a good one right there. This is Riding High. This is mid-70s stuff into the late 70s. Here's another really good live album, and that kind of picture, that kind of tells it all right there. See that? And here's one I not only had the vinyl copy when I was a senior in high school, but had the 8-track copy because I had to have it when I went anywhere. I love this album. It's a 2-record set, and it really shows how generous Jerry Jeff was, generous to other artists. He could have just done his own songs and reaped all the royalty benefits, but he always was looking for to promote others that he thought were worth hearing. And in this case, this live album includes poetry. That's Hondo Crouch right there, a cowboy poet. And so there's a couple of instances where he recites poetry on here. And he does, the album opens with stereo chickens. Literally, they just take a mic out and record at the chicken coop in the morning with the chickens, and he starts picking a little bit. Pick a little dog, pick a little dog, pick a little dog, pick dog, you know. And just quirky, you know. Jerry Jeff got away with a lot. Why? He could sell a certain number of records. He had a very loyal following. And he wasn't going to sell a huge amount of records. He wasn't going to have hit songs on the radio. I know I saw an obituary they mentioned he had several minor hits in the mid to late 70s. I never, ever heard a Jerry Jeff Walker sung song. Never heard his version of any song on the radio, on country radio, and I can ever recall. He made it by touring constantly and putting out good quality records that his fans would purchase. But that's a really good one. And then I always like the expression used for this title of this album, "Contrary to Ordinary." There's Jerry Jeff, rodeo cowboy, and this trying to hold the wind up with the sales. One of his Saturday Night Special, which I believe is a Tom Waits song, isn't it? Am I wrong on that? I'll look real quick. No, Lee Clayton wrote that one. Okay. Butch Hancock was another songwriter he championed. He wrote a song with Jimmy Buffett, L.A. Lady, not L.A. Lady, Railroad Lady. And he and Jimmy Buffett wrote that song, and they gave it to Lefty Frizzell, who was getting on up in years and hadn't had a hit in a long time. They gave it to him, and he had a minor hit on country radio with that. Here's one from '78. Yep. And that's his daughter and his wife, Susan. And we want to send our condolences to his wife, daughter, and son, Django. He died of cancer. Jerry Jeff did. Cancer's killed so many good people. Too Old to Change. There he is with his daughter again. Son hadn't been born yet, I guess, at this point. Reunion is this album. There's one more. Cal Jazz. This is 1983. A year or two later, he and his wife Susan, who was his business manager, figured out they could be a do-it-yourself operation. Keep it simple. They would produce, distribute, sell their own records, and not be, give so much of the profits to the record label. Jerry Jeff continued for many, many years. I don't want to run too long on this. I remember seeing him. One time he played, and I had to work. Wasn't able to go to the show up in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. Played place called PB Scott's. And I remember after work, he was doing 2 sets evidently. And I'd gotten off of work, and I'd gone to a place called the Woodlands, just down the road for a drink. And and the Woodlands is a Mexican / barbecue place that has live music, and he came into the restaurant, and there was a little bar, just a part of the restaurant. The restaurant's no bigger than It's two-story, but it's not big at all. Maybe a couple hundred people in there. And he came in and got a drink at the bar, and nobody bothered him. We whispered, that's Jerry Jeff, he must be between sets. But nobody went up there and started patting him on the back, hey, and all this sort of stuff. Everybody respected him, and I'm sure he appreciated that. Phil Stinson, who played it was a Friday night because Phil Stinson was there. Phil Stinson, who played every Friday night, still does, I think, 40 years later, about every Friday night at the Woodlands. He did, knowing who it was, he did walk up to him very quietly and said, if you'd like to get up and play a song or two, you're welcome. I'll give up the stage for you. And he said, no, we just enjoy drinking. So that was it. That's what I remember. And maybe the best story I've heard told about Jerry Jeff, and you can find this on YouTube, is told by Todd Snyder in his later years. Todd and Jerry Jeff were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they this was maybe 10 years ago or maybe a little longer, and they the square, I don't know Santa Fe, but evidently there's a central part of the city, a small city, and where all the restaurants and bars are and everything, and they pretty much closed the place down. Stepped outside, everything was shut down. There weren't any cars on the road, on the street. People weren't mingling around, and they started walking to their hotel room, and they listened, and they could hear Mr. Bojangles beginning to be played. And they went and found it. They just walked through back a couple of streets over, and there was this street musician, this busker, and he was just trying to pick up the last of the bar crowd coming out of the bars, I guess, all by himself, banjo and harmonica, and he's playing Mr. Bojangles. He's got his hat down in front of him, and Todd Snyder and Jerry Jeff walk up, and they just listen, and they're enjoying it. And Todd Snyder says he's wanting so bad to say, hey, you gotta listen. The song, this is the guy that wrote. He said, but I knew it wasn't my place to say anything, so I just kept my mouth shut and I listened. And when the guy got through playing the song, Jerry Jeff reached into his pockets and pulled out all the money he had in his pockets, tossed it into the hat, and said, I really enjoyed that. I appreciate it, and left. And the guy never knew that he had just played that song for the man that wrote it. So that's kind of guy Jerry Jeff was. So let's remember Jerry Jeff, all the people we've lost. Let's say a prayer for the family, and we know he's in a better place now. Okay. God bless all of you. Remember, be kind to your neighbors, because we're all neighbors, people. Take care.